And let's start off with a funny little intro. Funny, right? That's Batman for you. So my speech is called Batman, the Man, the Mystery, and the Influence. And what I want you to really take away from this speech is everybody needs a hero, even though heroes can be found in unlikely places. For some people, a traditional comic book hero is sufficient, but for others, they need some ordinary person to hold on to. So, just so you guys know, I've spent my teenage years reading Batman comic books, watching Batman movies, collecting Batman memorabilia. I'm kind of an expert on Batman. Batman's my hobby. One of the things that keeps me sane. I don't know why, but it does. Batman's a fascinating man. He's a billionaire who only wants to save the world from what he's suffered, which is kind of funny when you think about it because he's a billionaire. But he's learned that money can't buy him happiness. And he gets his happiness from saving others from what he's suffered. First, I'm going to give you a brief history of Batman, just so you guys have some background information. Then I'm going to talk about the Wall Street occupation, because the Wall Street occupation and Batman are very similar, which sounds ironic, I know. And then I'm going to discuss how they're both vigilantes and they're both heading towards the same goal. So Batman first appeared in 1939 in Detective Comics number 27, and he was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, which is kind of funny because you never hear about Bill Finger, but you always hear about Bob Kane. Bob Kane did the artwork and Bill Finger did the writing. Bob came up to Bill and was like, "Oh, I have this idea," and he showed him this picture, and it was a picture of this guy in a costume swinging on a rope, and he had entitled it Batman. So that's sort of where it all came from. And he was inspired by detective stories and pulp stories. Back in the day, you could go to a dime store and buy a little paperback book, and it was some cheap little story about, sometimes they were about detectives, sometimes they were romances, but that was kind of what started the whole Batman thing. So Batman's been in the media ever since 1939. And his television show started in 1965. It starred Adam West and Burt Ward. You might remember Adam West now from Family Guy. He plays the mayor. But it was sort of this like kitschy, weird show. It wasn't serious. It wasn't dark. It was kind of bad, actually, and nobody took it very seriously. Every week, they fought some villain, and it was way over dramatic. And look at the costumes. Obviously, this was not serious. There's also been cartoons like the 1990s animated series, which you can see illustrated on there. This was way different than the 1965 show. It was way grittier, way darker, not at all really geared towards children when you think about it. I mean, people got shot in that show, people died. I watched it growing up, but now I don't quite understand why I was allowed to watch it. Batman really has spanned the generations because there are still Batman cartoons being made. There's the Batman, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Justice League Unlimited. Batman's pretty much everywhere. He's also in films. We have our Batman series, which is starring Christian Bale and directed by Christopher Nolan. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises. But there was also that really awful 90s series. George Clooney starred in one of them. Nobody really likes to talk about those movies because they kind of were a throwback from the 1965 where it was gaudy and just not very good. Batman's also been in video games like Arkham Asylum. Arkham City just came out. He was also in games for the Super Nintendo system. I think he was in the Sega system too, so he's really been everywhere. Can't really escape Batman. But really, he's an ordinary man, like, done underneath it all. He's seen as a billionaire playboy, and he works really hard to maintain that image because he doesn't want anybody to know that he is Batman, for obvious reasons. Batman is a vigilante, Batman is illegal. Bruce Wayne trained for years and years in martial arts, logic, detective skills. In the animated series, he even trained with a magician. He did all this under false names so nobody could trace it back to Bruce Wayne, so nobody could figure out that he was the Batman. And everything that he trained for, he trained to become a better Batman. Everything goes back to Batman for him. He even says in the cartoon Batman Beyond, in his head, he doesn't call himself Bruce Wayne. He calls himself Batman. Bruce Wayne is more of a facade than Batman is. So like I told you guys, ironically, Batman and the Wall Street Occupation participants have a lot in common. And this is strange because the Wall Street Occupation kind of goes against everything that the billionaire stands for. The Wall Street Occupation began September 17, 2011. All these people are living in Zuccotti Park in New York, which is not that far from Wall Street, which is why it's called Occupy Wall Street. Arrests have been made of these people. As of November, it was at least 300 arrests. These people have been arrested for loitering, for littering. I heard of one lady who got arrested for drawing on the sidewalk. She was defacing public property. The police don't want these people doing what they're doing. That's not okay. That's not allowed. These protesters are fighting for equality. They are the 99%. You've probably heard that phrase said a couple times lately. The 99%, we would be considered the 99%. We're not wealthy. We don't have power. We don't drive nice cars. The 99% right now is struggling. We are losing our homes. We're losing our jobs. Some of us are going hungry. The occupiers are fighting against corporate greed, and they're fighting for living wages. They don't want that wealth themselves. They want to be able to survive. That's what they're fighting for. This movement is spreading. It spread is like Portland. I think there's one in LA. Students on college campuses have started doing it. Workers in other industries are doing it. I mean, on Wall Street, there are even nurses. And when you think about it, that's kind of a big thing for a nurse to leave her position to go, or his or her position, I'm sorry, to go beyond Wall Street to fight this, what they're seeing is such a big thing, to join this protest. Arrests are happening everywhere. People are being arrested everywhere for doing this. So Batman is a revolutionary. The Wall Street Occupation is full of revolutionaries. At their heart, they're the same. Batman wants to spare anyone the pain he felt. What happened to Batman when he was 8 years old, he was going home with his parents from a movie. A mugger came up and shot his parents, and they died. Bruce Wayne watched his parents die in front of them, and he's always felt responsible. He always felt like there was more he could do. So by becoming the Batman, he's trying to spare anyone the pain that he felt. He doesn't want anyone to suffer the way he has. The Wall Street movement is doing the same thing. They don't want people, the future generations, to suffer the way they have. They don't want anyone to be losing their home, to be going hungry, to live day by day not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. They're fighting for the same thing. The thing is, everybody here is breaking the law. Being a vigilante is legal. You can't dress up, run around and beat people up. You can't do it. It's not okay. And it sounds strange that what Batman does is illegal because he's doing it for a good reason, right? The thing is, where does good reasoning stop? Who gets to decide who's a criminal and who's not? You can't have one man being the law and deciding who deserves what. That's just not okay. And it is strange because in the comic books, Batman does have some allies. Commissioner Gordon, who is head of the police department, supports Batman. They even have the bat signal, so you would think at its heart Gotham would really be for the Batman, but it's not really. Actually, oddly enough, the rich people, the higher class people in Gotham, the class that Bruce Wayne belongs to, they don't really like the Batman. They think he's strange, and that's because Gotham is a corrupt city. A lot of the bad things that are happening in Gotham are happening because the higher ups who have all the power are causing bad things to trickle down. They're embezzling money. Bad things are happening because of these higher class people, and Batman is trying to stop that. It's also illegal to live in a public park. which is what the Wall Street occupation is doing. You can't do that. You can't have these mass congregations of people living in a public place. Just like that's why it's legal for hobos to sleep on the bench. You can't do that. And it's illegal, like I said, it's legal to have a mass congregation. But it's funny because they're both fighting the corrupt. They both want better from what they're seeing as corrupt. So even though both of these groups are fighting their hardest for what they believe in, they both stick to their ethics. They're both very strict in their ethics. Batman, for instance, refuses to use a gun. And you would think that would be easier for him, to just take a gun and shoot these criminals like the Joker, the Penguin, what have you. He refuses. Batman himself does not want to kill anybody. Batman doesn't want to hurt anybody. He wants to gather them up and return them to the law so they can have their day in court or whatever. The OWS claims to be a peaceful movement. They're not trying to start a riot. They're not throwing smoke bombs. They're not trying to hurt anybody. They are just trying to prove their point. So what I want you to take away from this: a brief history of Batman reveals a fascinating past. And there's so much more to talk about with Batman, but it's so hard to cover everything to do with Batman in this short amount of time. The Wall Street occupation has turned our generation upside down. The Wall Street occupation has inspired so many people to go out and do more. That is spreading. There's so much more to come from this, too. This is a revolution right here in America. That is so exciting that we're living in this time to see a revolution. Batman and the Wall Street occupation are very similar in many ways. So remember, everybody needs a hero. For some, it's just something simple like Batman. It's some comic book fictional hero that they can grasp onto. For other people, they need something more real, more tangible, that they can see and experience. Both Batman and the OWS are fighting for what they believe in. Let that inspire you. Be the change that you want to see. Don't sit there and complain. Rise up and make a change. No cape required. Thank you.